Okay.
Sorry, Aman, you can start from there, right? Akanksha, can you address this slide? We'll be telling this about this at the end of the lecture too.
Yeah, guys, we'll be announcing our SOC Season of Code program, which is a mentorship program at the end. So stay tuned for more details. We'll share more details at the end.
If you talk to your seniors, like plus one or plus two or plus three, they'll tell you the season of code is a very, a very important program for the first year students, right? So we'll be sharing the details, and after the details are shared, you'll actually know why this thing is very important for you, right? This could be the very first place where you'll actually develop some software which will be of practical use and which will go out to the public, right? So this will be a very interesting thing for you, and you can just go out and watch for it. Aman, you can just test your mic once. Aman,
Hello, am I
yeah.
audible?
So yeah, you are
Yeah.
audible. Uh, so let's start with it. You can start with the workshop.
So, hello everyone, and welcome back to our lecture series on Flutter. Today, we are going to introduce you to the need for code architecture and state management in Flutter, followed by their basics and best practices, followed by us at MDG Space. Finally, we will conclude with an introduction to Firebase services. Okay, so let's first understand what is code architecture and why do we need it. But before starting, let's first take a look at these two images. Can you explain the difference between them?
Yeah, guys. So there are two images shown on your screen. Can you spot any difference between these two images? Like what you see? What is the difference between these two images? I can see some differences, and I'll try to answer with you. Aman, I can see the first one is, yeah, as SP is also saying, the first one looks more organized than the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, how many of you thinks like this is correct reasoning? Like first one is more organized than the second one. Yeah, so the first one is organized. Arshita is saying the same. Yeah, man, you can
Yeah.
continue.
So most of you will spontaneously say that first one is arranged in better manner than the second. Well and good. Now, if you are told to insert one or more items in the arrangement without detaching others, which one do you think will be easier? The first one, right?
Yeah.
Why?
So the Akshat is also saying the first one is more modular. Manan is saying the first one is more modular.
So why? Why do you think that? Please comment down in.
Okay, why you think the first one is more easy to attach and detach something, right? Right, Aman?
Yeah.
That's the question. Yeah.
Yes.
So there must be some reasoning to it, right?
I personally think like I would not be able to figure out where the threads are attached, where the end is.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is no understanding as to where I would
Usman is
put
also saying
something.
the same thing. Usman is saying
Yeah,
the first one is like organized, and Shivendra is also saying the same thing. Manan is also saying the same thing. Arshita is saying we don't have to change the others and directly attach in first.
yeah, that's
Okay,
a great
so Aman,
answer.
are we right?
Yeah. So, because in the first one, due to better arrangement, you can clearly understand the arrangement of the thread, and you can just shift one or two items to make place for another one to be placed similarly. But on the other hand, in the second one, even if you yourself have arranged the items the way they are, most probably you will have difficulty in figuring out how they are attached, due to which you might detach others while inserting or removing the new one. So, coming to the most relatable example, if you keep your cupboard arranged properly, it's easier to locate your clothes and to figure out where to keep a new item of clothing. Don't worry though, we are not going to ask you to clean your cupboards, just your code will do. The similar principle applies in the field of software development in general. That is, if the code is not arranged in good manner, that is, if it is not architectured well, then it is difficult to manage it and add or remove features onto it, which might lead to crashing of the whole system due to difficulty in interpreting the code, even if yourself have written the code. And this is not an acceptable state of affairs since most of our products, even at MDG space, are undertaken in groups. The problem gets bigger with the size of the software. That's why there's a need to have a set of rules that define the way in which the code should be organized so that it can be changed easily. This is exactly what a code architecture is. It provides a set of rules to group different parts of the projects into different modules and also defines how these modules interact with each other so that they have least interdependencies. In this way, new features can be easily added or removed without disturbing others. The modularity achieved due to this also helps in debugging the code easier to find where the bug is in modular system. Some examples of different architecture patterns are MVP, Model View Presenter, MVC, Model View Controller, MVVM, Model View View Model, Block, Business Logic Component, etc. Until now, you would have gotten a brief idea about what is code architecture and why it's needed in a project. Architecture is a general topic that applies to all the projects that we make, irrespective of the framework used. That is, you will be using some architectural pattern whether or not you are working with Flutter. Now coming to state management, a very important topic. It's specific to framework like Flutter, where we need to specify when the state is to be updated by calling a function like setState. If you have attended our previous lecture, then you must already be familiar with state in Flutter and also with the fact that setState need to be called whenever the UI to be updated using a state variable. But setState is viable only if the state variable is accessed on a single screen. If the state is needed in many parts of the app, then we cannot change their state from different screen directly. But states such as is user authenticated or user information, etc. need to be accessed or modified from many places in the app. And handling them with set state might result in passing of many functions down the widget tree, which result in extremely messy code. Hence, for these cases, there are many different state management approaches that are used in Flutter, such as provider, streams, redux, etc. In Flutter, these state management approaches are used along with different architecture patterns. Now let's talk about one of the state management solution, that is provider, and we will also see how it is used with one of the architecture named MVVM in Flutter. So let's first know about a provider. Provider is an object which allows us to expose certain values, which can be either primitive values or objects, to its descendants. For example, as in the figure, the provider placed above the topmost widget will expose the value assigned to it to all the descendants of that widget. And you can rebuild any of the widget among its descendant according to the value by placing a consumer over that widget. So in the figure, if the value of the variable assigned to provider changes, the widget below the consumer will be rebuilt according to the new value. This solves the problem of using same state on different widgets, as you can use the state by providing a provider on the parent widgets of the two widgets. Provider is present in Flutter by default. It is defined in provider package, which you can find on pub.dev. Now let's see how it works, as sometimes it might be confusing to work with it without knowing it. Provider uses an object called build context in Flutter. Build context, or simply context, is used by Flutter to pass on information to the widgets about its surrounding to determine their positioning and size on screen. You can consider context as river flowing with information from widget tree top, that is parents, to its descendants. Provider puts the value into this context, and since all the descendants get that context from the parent, hence you can also get the value from context and update the widget accordingly using the consumer. There are many types of provider which are useful in different cases. You can read about them on the package documentation on pub.dev. Now, as you know about provider, let's see more about MVVM and see how provider is used in combination with it. MVVM expand to its three components, namely model, view, and view model. Model provides with the blueprint of the data to be used in app in the form of classes. For example, user class for representing the information about the user. View has the complete description of the UI to be shown in the app. And view model has all the logic that how the data will change in the app and in what way the user will interact with the app. These three components work together to fulfill the requirements of the app. The flow is that view model provides the data to the view by doing some computation or by fetching the data from the database and provide in the form of model objects, and view will notify the view model about the user interaction such as tapping a button, etc., so that view model can update the data accordingly and then provide the updated data to the view. In the whole process, provider is used between view model and view to update the value in view according to the view model's object data. So now I would like to call Dhruv for explaining the MDG's best practices.
Yeah, so thanks, Aman. What Aman told you about is what MVVM is, right? So he told you about there's something called model, there's something called view, and there's something called view model, right? But it is hard to understand these things just by theory. So we've called Dhruv, and Dhruv will actually show you the practical, making the files, making the folders, going into the folders to actually explain you how the things are working, right? Yeah, Dhruv, you can continue now.
Okay, can you just confirm once whether I'm audible?
Yeah, you're perfectly audible.
Okay. Thanks, Aman and Prakhar. Hello, everyone. I'm Dhruv Mehrotra, and I'm going to show you the best practices we use at MDG Space using a real app. And after that, we'll also learn about Firebase services. So let's get on with it. First, let's see how a project is arranged. Okay, so this here is a test project that we've created. If you recall from our last workshop, as I mentioned, most of the code that we edit, uh, just a second. Yeah. Most of the code that we write and edit will be placed inside the lib folder, right? Uh, if you recall from our last workshop, this folder only had a couple of files. One was the main.dart file, and we had another custom widget file. But if you look here, we've arranged all, like, we have a lot of files and we've arranged them into folders and subfolders, so so that it's easier to manage. Going one by one, first off is enums. Within the enum, we have one file which is viewstate.dart. Basically, this folder is going to contain all our enums, and this particular, like, you might be asking what is an enum, right? So an enum is a an enum defines states. For example, if I have a variable of type view state, it will only be able to have values from a given set of values which are defined here, right? So it's idle, busy, and error. So if I declare a new variable of type view state, it will only have one of three values: view state.idle, view state.busy, or view state.error. So that's all about enums. Coming to next, we have models. Models as is the same as what Aman mentioned within MVVM. It's the first capital M in MVVM, and models are basically blueprints for how you want to how you want to structure your data in your app. It's comparatively easier, like it's way easier as compared to using raw data, etc. We'll go more into depth with what these are. As of now, all I want you to understand is how we've created, the structure we've created in these folders, etc. And this is how we're going to arrange code. Okay. Next off is services folder. Within the services folder, we have multiple services. One of these is Firebase service. Okay, so these services are the basically they are the sources with which we can maybe fetch data from, let's say, an API, or maybe this one in particular is for Firebase service, and it will help us to get data from Firebase, maybe write some data to our database, etc. This folder will contain all our services, or it could be local storage service. Like another file, this particular one is used to store data locally inside your phone, etc. Coming to UI, UI has two folders. First off is views, which is as Aman previously explained. They will contain the overall description of how your page is going to look like, right? For example, the homeview.dart is going to define how the home page of your app is going to look like. Similarly, loginview.dart is going to define how your login page will look. And these are created using the widgets that we discussed in our last workshop. For example, within the login view, you can see we've returned. If I go to if I go to the layout parts, there's a safe area, there's a scaffold, there is a center with some padding, there is a form, etc. Coming to components, it might happen that, let's say, I've defined a specific widget here called custom list type. It might happen in our app that, let's say, I want to display a set of information. It may be a card, it'll basically be a container that contains information about a specific user, and it has a specific structure. So what I can do in my app is, let's say I want to display this specific card of a user in two of my pages. So what I can do is I can put at this entire part, like this is the description. Since this is inside the builder method, this is the description as to what that particular widget is going to look like. So I could either write this description in both of the files, or I could do what I've done here. I could just create a new widget called custom list style. I could define it, extending stateless widget, and like provide its entire description for what it's going to look like. And I can use custom list style in both of those pages. What this will achieve is, I'll have to write less code. Like I'll have to write the code once only, and plus this makes our app overall more consistent, right? I'm not repeating code. I'm not writing the same code over and over again twice, etc.
Yeah,
Okay.
nice. Like this is a really nice thing. And this is not just limited to the mobile apps, right? Whenever you write code in any software, you had to stop the repetition of code, right? You just can't copy paste the same code in different files. Like if you say you want to show a button, right? And you wrote a code for to show a button in one file, and you want to show the same button in some other page also. You won't go and copy paste that same code in two files, right? You'll use the same common component. That is what Dhruv is trying to say, right, Dhruv?
Yep, exactly. Like this makes our app more consistent, right? And it's easier because you know this is the custom list type, and this is used this way, this place as well as this place, right? Move like with a similar philosophy, we also define utils, that is utilities for our app. For example, if I go into one of the utils called app, like one of the files inside utils called app-theme.dart, you can see it's a class where I've defined a static constant text style called headline one. So basically, the function, like the usage is going to be very similar. Let's say I have 4 pages in my app, and in all of the 4 pages, what I want is that the text at the very top should be of this specific text style, like this font family, this font weight, and this font size. I could have rich text in all of those files, and within the rich text, I could write this part as the text type, right, and provide some text that this is the text I want to be displayed. I could do that, but going to do, like what is the better practice, because I don't want to repeat code. Uh, why needlessly increase my file size, right? Someone else is going to read that too. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll define a text style called headline one, and give it this specific text style. And if I want to use that specific style somewhere else, what I'm going to do in that place is I'm going to write app theme dot headline one, and this will automatically, like this is the definition for this text style. So this will be used directly instead of writing the 4 to 5 lines of code. Okay. uh, Coming to view models next. These define all the view models for our app, as the name itself indicates. View models are basically like every single page is going to have a view model, and like the view defines all the UI of the app, that is the part of the app that the user sees. The view model is going to define all of the behind the scenes logic of that view. Okay. uh, Moving on to locator.dart. Okay, this is basically a locator that we set up for our app. The job of a locator is basically, your app will have several services. Like for example, here we've set up a Firebase service and an API service. So when an app has several services, like you'll have to use these services over and over again. So if you call these services directly, what you'll end up creating is every time you'll create a new instance of that service. So whenever you create a new instance, that service will require some time to set up. And so every time you use that service, you're going to be setting up that service over and over again. This will lead to wastage of time, right? It will lead to long loading times, etc. So what Locator does is it keeps a list of those services, and using Locator, you can directly use the existing instance of that service, right? Rather than creating a new instance. I'll go more into depth into this later. As of now, just understand the basic architecture, like the basic way in which I've arranged the files and folders. Then there is the main.art file that will contain the main function. It will run my app, and the my app will return a material app. And here it will contain some of the data as well as screens, etc. And then there is the router, which is the app router, which defines the class app router. So app router basically defines routes for all your apps. What this basically means is like it defines how you like if you want to navigate within your app, which is called routing. Like navigating between pages in your app is called routing. So if you want to go from one page to another, the app router provides a consistent way to do that. And I'll go more into depth into this later too, right? Okay. So now that that's done with, coming to MVVM and provider. MVVM plus provider is basically an architectural pattern, but it can be used in many different ways. We here at MDG Space have determined a particular way of implementing this architecture in our apps. So let's go through it one by one. We'll start from the very right, that is from the view. A view is basically just a screen. Every screen in the app has a corresponding view in Dart code. Like the as I mentioned, I'm going to define what that view is going to return on the screen within my build method, and I'm going to define it using widgets like scaffold, app bar, bottom nav bar, etc. Coming to view model, it controls all the logic as well as state of the screen, of a particular screen, right? Both of the two words are very important. For the view model, like for every single view, we are going to have a view model, and that specific view model will manage all the behind the scenes logic of that view. Plus, it will also handle the state management of that view. Okay. Now, coming to more general things like services and models, they are not available to every single screen every single time. Uh, like to understand this entire structure, like let's discuss the relationship between the components. All view models access one or more app specific services, right? App specific services can be auth service, which let's say gets a user signed in or gets a user signed up. It can be a user service which maybe lets a user change his or her profile picture, etc. And these app specific services like are called so because not all apps will have the same app specific services. For example, WhatsApp will need a service called chat service, right? Because it needs to implement chatting. But Google Chrome may not require such a service. Okay. Moving on to models, they are just regular classes that give a concrete form to our data by defining a blueprint for it. For example, you may have a user model that contains a name, email, and a password. You can have a message model, etc. These models will be used throughout the app. For example, user model will be required in a profile page as well as say in a page where you need to search for a group of users, right? Within our app too, if I were to show you our model, like I've defined a model called data model, and this data model provides a structure to the data that we're going to get from an API. How is that going to happen? I'll explain it to you later on. But as of now, you need to understand the model is going to provide a structure to our data rather than us using a random data all over the place. Okay. Okay. So let's come to generic services. These are services that are present in some form or the other in every single app. For example, your app will need to communicate to the internet, so it will require an API service. Your app may also have some data that is going to be stored locally, so that will be stored in the local storage service. And we'll go into more detail into each of these things later. Okay. So, but like before that, first off, let's talk about the easy stuff, right? Most apps have multiple screens. The top widget of our app is called Material App, and it knows about all the screens in your app. Then, whenever you need to go to a new screen, you can use the navigator of context.push named with this named route. Like we've used named routing because it's easier to understand and it makes things consistent. Route is another name for a screen, and routing is another name for moving between screens. So also, whenever you want to go back from a screen to the previous screen, you can use navigator of context.pop. Uh, Now, you may be asking, but like, how am I going to implement this part? Like, I understand in theory, but how am I going to implement this? So for that, coming to router.dart, inside it, we have a function called generate route. Inside that, we'll use a switch statement to check which route we want to go to. And accordingly, for example, let's say this case is loginview.id, and according to whichever is the case, we will return a material page route with the specific view that we want to return. For example, if it is home view, home view.id, I want to return my home view. If it is profile view.id, I want to return my profile view, and so on. Uh, this may seem a bit complicated, but like most of this is going to be just copy paste, right? Now all we need to do is go to the main.dart file and supply this function to our material app. So if I go to my main.dart file, yeah, you can see here, there is a parameter called on generate route within our material app, and for that parameter on generate route, I have given it my function app router.generate route, which was this function here. Like basically what I did there was I clicked on control, and then if you click on the widget, it shows you other places in which that specific function or class etc is used. Okay, so yeah, this like I have given it this function, and I've given it in the home property, I've given it a startup view, which will be the starting view of our app. Okay. Now you may also be confused, like what is that login? What is this login view.id stuff, right? Don't worry. If I go to its implementation, you can see within login view, I've defined specifically a static constant string called ID, and I've given it the name login underscore view. So basically, when I say case login view.id, it basically refers to the string login underscore view. So if this is the string that we are getting, I want to go to login view. If I'm getting a different string, let's say I am getting the string defined here, home underscore view, I'll go to the home view. Fair enough, right? Okay. Uh, Moving on, like while we are on the topic of screens, let me show you how I'm going to create a new screen in this specific architecture, right? First of all, I'm going to make a new view model. So I'll go into my view models folder and I'll create a new Dart file, and I'll call it, let's say, test view model or Dart. Okay. Uh, Within my test view model, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my class and I'm going to call it test view model. And this class is going to extend, like all other classes in our app, uh, all other view model classes in our app, the base view model. Okay. And yep, that's it for now. Now, the next step for in the process is going to be creating my view. So I will create my view. For that, I'll go inside the UI folder, inside the views, and I'll create a new Dart file. And let's say for test view model, I call it test view dot Dart. Okay. Okay, so this is going to be my new file, and like I'll write the exact implementation. So for that, like what usually I will be writing is I will write maybe class test view extends and so on. But uh, I could do this, like I could write the entire thing, but there is also a shortcut for it. Like whether you're using Android Studio or VS Code, there are shortcuts for stateful and stateless widget. For example, if I write STL in my Android Studio, it will give me a hint that maybe you want to create a stateless widget. So if I click on this, it will create the boilerplate code for the stateless widget, and all I have to do is write the name for my widget, and I personally am going to call it test view. Okay. It's showing an error currently because the import is missing. Okay. Now that that's done, I am not going to return a container. Rather, I'm going to return a base view of a type specific type. The type will be the view model for this specific view, which is the test view model. And then there is the builder function. If you don't know what is going to go into it, you can simply hover over it and you can check. So the builder is going to accept a function with build context, with a view model of type test view model, and a nullable widget. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give it the context. I'm going to define model, and I'm going to give it a child. After that, what I'm going to do with the builder is I'm going to return, let's say, a scaffold for my screen. And within the scaffold, let's just not leave it empty. Within the body property, let's say I'm going to give it a text widget. Sorry. Let's say I'm going to give it a text widget, and let's just give it some text. Hello world. Okay. Right now it's going to give me an error because I have not given the semicolon here, and it will tell me to make it a constant because it's a constant widget. Also, yeah. If I just reformat it, yeah. So that's how I'm going to create my view in this, view in this. And also, like you might be saying, what about that test view.id thing, right? So what I'm going to do to integrate this specific view with my router is I'm going to define a static constant string like I did for all other pages. Let's say I call that string id, just like I did in all other pages. Just for the sake of consistency, I could call it anything else. But for that I would have to name it if where I write in the router, I would have to name it test view dot whatever is the name of the variable here. And let's say I call it test underscore view. I could give it any name, but I prefer to call it test view. And what I'm going to do now is I'll go and register this in my router. So just like I've registered all these pages, for uh, the case here will be test view.id, right? Test view.id. And the material page route that I'm going to return, okay, it's going to give me an error because it's not yet imported. And I need to return the page test underscore view, right? Sorry, test view. I have to return this page. It will also ask me to make it constant. Yep. And that's it. That's how I've integrated, I've created a view model for my page. Basically, that was a lot of work, right? So I'll just basically tell you what I did. I created a view model for my page. Just after that, I created a view for my page that returns base view with type of that specific view model that this page is going to have. And also, what I also did was I defined an ID variable here, and I'm going to use that ID for routing inside this, like inside my entire app. Okay. So this part is done. We made the view. We gave it some text. We returned a base view. We provided some UI inside the scaffold. Like I gave it a text widget. Okay. The next step is to make setters and getters for your variable. Like I've already done this with most of my pages. So I'll just show you an example with the login view. Let's say login view model. Okay. If I go inside the login view model, yep. So here I have a private variable underscore is hidden, right? And I have a public getter and a public setter. So what a getter will do is basically, since this is a private value, it can't be accessed from outside. So I have a public get function that will allow me to access this value. For example, if I go inside okay, I can't get it like this exactly. Huh? I'll show this exact thing inside the login view, right? As of now, you can understand the getter is going to get me the underscore is hidden value, which is a private value, and the setter will be called with some value as an argument, and it will be used to set underscore is hidden equal to some value. So, uh, like uh, this was very simple, right? Now, if someone calls a getter from outside, he or she is going to get the value for underscore is hidden. But what if someone calls a setter, right? If someone tries to change this from outside, two things will happen. First off, the value will be changed because the value that that person is giving as a parameter is being set to the variable. But the second thing is that notify listeners is being called. Now, what this method does is it tells the view that something has changed inside it, and it needs to update whatever is displayed. So yeah, that's it. uh, okay, coming to the slides, I made the getters and setters, and I'll now go into init state and on model ready functions, right? Okay. uh, there can be several things that you need to do when a page is created. For example, if let's say we have a controller, if you explode widgets on your own and explode a form widget, you might have known that the form widget, like if not, then also I'll tell you, form widgets will have text editing controllers, and those controllers need to be instantiated when you create that specific page. Okay, so like this usually is done inside a function called init state that is available for stateful widgets. What init state is like, it is called whenever the page is being built. So the like whenever the page is being built in my app, it will instantiate the text editing control. But in MVVM plus provider architecture, all my widgets are going to be stateless. So I have no way to no way to specify an init state. So this all stuff that was to be called an init state will now go inside an on model ready function. Similarly, whatever you need to do before the screen is destroyed goes inside the on model destroy. Okay. To show their exact implementations, I'll go to login view, and inside the login view, yeah, here I return a base view of type of that view model, and inside it, on the on model parameter, like in the on model ready property, it takes a function which will eventually call my on model ready function. Like if I control plus click on this, you can see it's the same on model ready function within the login underscore view model, right? And the same is for on model destroy. Okay. uh, Now that this part is done, next part is to tell our material app about a new screen. This is the part that where I registered my app with the router. Moving on, we will put all our logic inside the view model. Okay. Uh, One of the most important like aspects of architecture is separation of UI code and like the logic, right? So the view is all layout and stuff, but the view model is going to be the brains of my app. So if I go to login underscore view model, you will see this has a function called login. Uh, right, and this function is basically going to log my user in. But like if I control plus click on this, you can see that this function was used inside the login view. So basically what the login view does is it is defining the entire thing as to what your app is going to look like layout wise, and what it's going to appear to the user. And whenever something needs to be done, some logic needs to be executed, it will call a method of the view model, and the view model will have the exact implementation as to how that method is going to be implemented, right? Like this is how we are going to separate UI and logic. This is entirely UI, and if it needs something logical to be done, it will call like, hey view model, I need your help. Please like log in this, please execute the login function for this user, and so on. Now, this all seems like a lot of work, I know. So let me explain its benefits to you so that you are motivated to at least try to do this, right? And this is a requirement, right? We need to do this in every single app. Firstly, it hides all the parts of state management. You may think that just using state was way easier, right? But but like it will be very very difficult once you start making an app that has say 10 to 15 pages, and some of the pages are nested inside one another, etc. Secondly, it separates logic and UI, as I showed you using the example of the login function, right? It's very helpful because don't need to spend hours searching through your code for that one function that is throwing a specific error. Like the one function that is throwing an error is exactly inside your view model, right? And to smooth it out, architecture provides direct alternatives for the normal techniques that we learned earlier, right? For example, set state becomes notify listeners, init state becomes on model ready, and all the state variables now become view model variables. Okay, now let us look at the other end of the picture. As I said before, we need to talk to the internet and storage on the phone. The easiest way of doing this is to use packages like HTTP and shared preferences, Like they make it very easy to access the internet. The API service uses HTTP package, and it has several methods, like let's say a get method, a post method, etc. Like you might also ask why these specific names for the method. This is because the API, like it enables actual HTTP requests. For example, there is a get request, like yeah, this the get request, which is useful in getting data from the internet. Then there is a post request that is implemented by it, that is used to like push some data to the internet, like give some data, etc. uh, okay. uh, if I show you my exact implementation for it, I'm going to go into my services, because all these are services, right? These are general services, and I go to API service. Now, this may look like a lot of code, but the good thing here is that most of this code is like this is just a general service. So most of this code you can just copy paste into any project you want, and then whenever you want to talk to the internet, you can just use this service. Like if I show you its usage, you can see API service has a function called get data, and that get data function was called by the home view model, right? And like it had API.get data. If I check what API is a variable of type API service, and it is using the locator to get an instance of API service. So what basically is happening is my home view will request the home view model for some data. So inside my home view model, there is the API variable, which is like an instance of API service, and that is going to call the function get data, and it will basically ask the API, like my general API service, to give it some data, and it will return that data. Okay, see, it was just that simple. Coming to our next service, it's the local storage service. This is used to store persistent data locally. You might ask, what is persistent data? So, like some data in your app needs to be stored permanently. For example, let's say you're using the Flipkart app, and so in that app, once you log in and let's say you store something to your cart, if you close the app, it stops running. But if you come back to the app, you launch it again, it does not sign you out, right? So it's storing some of your data locally, that let's say is the user signed in or not. So in my app, if I show like local storage service, within the local storage service, you can see this function. Now, first of all, like I understand that this is a lot of code, but everything above this specifics comment, everything above everything above this is just general thing. So you can just copy paste it to any project you want, and below it is is your actual implementation. So for anything that you want to store, you will have to need three things, right? First is the static constant string. I've called it is logged in key, and I've set it to some string here, right? This is the first thing. You need a key. Second thing is you need to have a getter function to get the value. And what this will do is basically it will call a function called get from disk, which will basically search within your local storage to see if the package that we have used here can is able to find this is logged in key variable. Okay. And another thing that you need is the setter, and that setter is used to change its value. Okay. uh, Side note here, like shared preferences actually also has some limits to what data you can use, what data you can store, etc. uh, like uh, the content up to here has been very heavy. So Prakhar, if you could just like recap it for everyone once.
Yeah, so guys, so there's been much of the content that we've done till now. So what we told you is how to write code in an architectured way, how to first of all, how to structure the data that you are getting from anywhere. Say you get data from an API, say you get data from local storage, so or say you get data from anywhere. The time it comes to your app, it needs to get structured, and the way you get structured data is you make models and frame those data in a structured way through the models. Okay, now you want to show something on the screen. The code for showing something on the screen goes into the views that makes up the views portion, right? The structured data makes up the models portion, and controlling all these things, controlling the views, what they are doing, taking the structured data from the model, using them inside the views, all these tasks are controlled by view model. So these are the three parts, the basic three parts of MVVM: model, view model. Okay, so first we just told you about this. First, we told you about this in theoretical way. Then we showed you some code. Then we also told you how to route from one page to other using generated route, right? Uh, uh, After that, we use some buzzwords like API, local storage. Uh, Now I'll just give you a brief about what API is. That is not in the slide, but I'll just tell you. See, there is some data that our backend wants to give us, but there has to be some way how we can communicate to the backend, right? See, if I'm communicating to you, I'm using English language, right? But computers don't understand English. The web server that is there, web server is nothing but a remote computer, right? There's a computer which is somewhere remotely, and I want to get some data from that computer. That's all what a server is in basic terms, right? So if I want to get some data from that remote computer, I need to find a way to do it, right? So just understand, the API thing is just that computer exposing its specific data to us, and we are using that API to get that data from that computer, right? And that is the data which is unstructured, and the model is the part that is gonna structure it, right? So now there is something called HTTP. There are you can just read about HTTP more on the YouTube, and you under HTTP is not a very small thing. You're gonna learn more and more about HTTP, and you're gonna go deeper and deeper into it. There, because there isn't just HTTP, there is HTTPS, and there's much more about it, right? So the thing you want to understand here is there are different methods in HTTP. There are different type of requests in HTTP. For example, there are GET requests, which you hit to get some data. Now, what type of data? See, when you open a page in your browser, the data comes to your screen. Say you open youtube.com. Now, there is some data that comes to your computer, right? So that is through GET request. You are getting some data, right? Now, when you submit a form, say you want to submit a Google form, right? You are sending some data, right? You are sending some data to some other computer. That is happening to the post request, right? So the name tells you everything. The post means you are posting some data, right? So these are HTTP methods, and though these methods are gonna code inside our app, right? And these comes under the services folder. So that is what is kept under the services folder. Again, local storage, as you know, as Dhruv told you, say you log into some other app, right? And you just remove that app from the recent app. Then again, you open that app and you are still logged in. Right? How is this happening? There must be some data that is getting stored somewhere inside the app, outside the app, on the phone, right? So that is where local storage comes into play. There are multiple ways how you can store data locally. There are shared preferences. There are separate databases using Hive and every such buzzword. But what you want to understand is that is just nothing but local storage. And this again comes under services, because there is some task going to happen here. Again, this is unstructured data, and you can structure it using the models folder, right? And this all is controlled by the code that is inside the view model, and all this data is gonna be shown to the user inside the app through the views folder. Now you get how everything is gonna combine and make a single code, right? Make a single code base, right? So Dhruv, now you can go forward, and now Dhruv, can you just go to the next slide?
Yep. Uh,
Okay, so now you can go forward with this, Dhruv.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now I'll talk about app-specific services, right? These services are general services. They'll be required by every single app. But your app will require some specific services. Okay. So this is what will come under the app-specific services. Also, as Prakhar mentioned, data from the internet will always be unstructured. So that is why we will need models. Models are just blueprints for class, and each model will have a set of variables that will define what the structure of the object is going to be, and it will also have methods from JSON and to JSON. Like if I go to my model, this is the data model. The data model has like I can name this anything, right? The name of the model is up to me. I've named it data model. It has variables like cases, today cases, recovered, etc. And it has a constructor for this. So like whenever I call data model with the data with this with these specific things, it will create an object. And also it has methods from JSON and to JSON. Now, like data sent over the internet, as Prakhar mentioned, is data is sent over the internet, and we get it through APIs, and it is sent in a special format called JSON. And JSON is a method of converting normal objects into strings so that they can be sent over the internet. Like your backend or whatever, whoever is sending you the data will also store it as an object. But to give that object to us, it will store it, like it will convert it to string, so that because strings can be interpreted in pretty much the same way in all the languages. So here, if I go to inside my data model, this is where these functions will come in. The from JSON function is going to take data in the form of map of string and dynamic JSON, and what it's going to do is it's going to return a data model object from like data. What this is like, this is basically decoding it. It's getting a random data and it's decoding it to form for me an object of type data model. Similarly, to JSON is going to convert my object with these variables to map string of type a map of string and dynamic. Okay, yeah, that's it. So like first of all, there are all these variables, and then the main constructor, and then the two methods from JSON and to JSON. Like if I go to the API service.dart, you can see inside the get data. Yeah, this is where the data is coming in. So I have set up a lot of print statements here so that I can show you in which way the data is coming in. Like I've set these equal to print so that you can separate the data. If I run my app now, okay, this will require a minute. Anyways, like what I want you to understand, like what I'm going to show you is that first of all, I'm printing like this variable called response.body. This will be between the first two equal to statement sets, and within the second two is going to be parse JSON. So like first off, it's going to send me data, and then I am going to use a method called JSON decode, and over that data, and what that method is going to do for me is it's going to decode that data into a better form. Okay. Yeah. Now that my app is running, I can show you that specific data where it is. Yeah. This is the first set of equal tos. So this is the string data that is sent across the internet to me. That is sent to me through the API. And like within the second set of equal tos, this is the data that we get after we use the method JSON decode. There is more data. It's just it has ended till here. Whatever. But like that's what I want you to understand. And once I get this data, like once it has been JSON, like, once I've used this method called JSON decode, which as you can see parses the string that we get and returns the resulting JSON object. So I'll get a JSON object from here, and I'll use that JSON object and I'll call the method from JSON on it. And as I mentioned, the from JSON method is going to return me an object of type data model from the JSON. Okay, so that's how we're going to handle the entire data here. Okay, coming to locator. Generally, services take a long time, as I previously mentioned. So we need to make sure that they aren't being created over and over again. That is why we will use a locator, and it is provided by Getit package, and it helps register services and view model classes so that the app can use them effectively. If I go to my locator again, yeah. First of all, I'll show you a use of the locator. Like if I go to my home view model, actually, if I go to my home view model, you can see inside the home view model, I have used locator, and then I've specified the type to get an instance of API service. And another thing, like first of all, if I go to locator, there is a setup locator function, and inside the setup locator function, uh, like there are many ways to register this, right? For example, there is register singleton and there is register factory. So register singleton, basically what it says is that I need to maintain only one instance of whatever is placed here. And like if I call locator of type this, like this, if I call locator of type this, what I want is that specific instance. I don't want a new instance to be created. Whereas for register factory, a new instance will be created, which is what you want with view models. But for services, you don't want that, right? Okay. Coming to linting, first of all, you might ask, what is linting, right? Uh, okay, I also wanted to mention one other thing with the locators. If I like, I need to set this locator upside. So in the main.dart file, inside the main function, before calling run app, I will call a function called setup locator, which will basically set these services and view models up. But this this thing, setting up the locators, is going to take some time, right? So what I need to add is I need to add an await keyword. But if I just add the await keyword, you will see that Flutter gives me an error that await expression can only be used in async function. So I will it will recommend me to add an async modifier here. And if I add the async modifier, it says it's okay. Uh, like what is happening here? You might ask, right? What is an async function? What is this await keyword, etc.? That's a great question. Basically, this is the concept for asynchronous programming, and this is like I say it should be one of the tasks for you today. Like it's a task for you today to read more about what is asynchronous programming. It will help you not only with Flutter but with software development in general. And you can search for asynchronous programming as well as what is like how async is implemented in Flutter. Okay. Coming to linting, first of all, what is linting, you might ask? Linter is a program that tells you how to format and improve your code. It won't tell you the big stuff, just the small things like this variable has never been used, so it should be removed anywhere, like or convert this doubly quoted string to a singly quoted string. Or as you saw in a previous example, like if I go here, uh, let's say if I go inside my router, uh, if I remove this, this is linter suggesting me that okay, test view is a constant, so you should add a constant modifier here, right? It just overall improves the code quality, and we at MDG Space follow like all the official recommendations by Flutter and Dart teams. So like we run like we check for this before pushing any code to GitHub. Okay. This was all about MDG's best practices, and it may seem like a lot of steps and rules, but when you want to make amazing apps with other amazing developers, you need some discipline, right? And this is what it provides. Uh, Enough about MVVM provider. Let's talk about Firebase, right? Firebase is a service that helps any freelance developer to have a ready-made backend. But first of all, what is backend? If you attended our previous workshop, you will know that there are some computations and tasks that are not possible to do on the mobile app itself. For these, we will have a persistent remote computer called server, which will do this for us. The server will basically handle two things. First off is first off the web server will handle like processing of huge things. Like if there is some huge computation that needs to be processed, the server will undertake it. And the second thing it will do is it will provide a permanent storage for everything through a database. All this information in our app is accessed through a permanent database. In our specific case, it is Firebase. So like this entire data is stored in Firebase, and no, like this in this specific case, if I go to favorites, yeah, this specific data for me is stored in Firebase, and like this that is a continuous storage of our data, and the database also is hosted on the web server itself. Now plus, like one other thing, a side note, your app can also have some of the data stored locally. Okay, so that's a local database. Coming to API, now, as we know, like web server is just a computer, and a computer cannot do anything until it's given an instruction, right? So how does the web server know what your application wants, whether it's a computation or whether it's some data? So as Prakhar explained, we have an API for that purpose. What the API will do is it will work as the link between our server and our front end. Like, if I were to explain to you with an example, let's say you're in a restaurant. There is a chef and he knows everything, like he has all the ingredients and he has the knowledge to make any recipe. And there you are, and you know what you want to order. Who is going to be the link between you and the chef? Who is going to tell the chef, okay, this specific user wants this? That's the waiter, right? Of course. So the API is going to provide that job, like of the waiter, and whatever request you have, the API will get that information to your web server, and it will handle that part of the job. Okay. What is Firebase? Firebase is a service provided by Google that allows you to quickly have a reliable backend. It has many subdivisions which help in different functions like Cloud Firestore, Crash Analytics, Firebase messaging, ads, etc. But the question is, what can Firebase do for you? The most common parts of Firebase that we use is to provide authentication and to store our data. I'll give you a brief overview of the steps to add Firebase now, but like we'll also share a more detailed video and documentation form of this so that you can do it on your own too. This here is the Firebase console. If I go to my console, yeah, if there is the option to add a new project, I will add a name for my project. For let's say I call this workshop 2 project. Like, let's say I call this project workshop 2. It will ask me whether I want to like add analytics or not. I will select my default account for Firebase and I'll write create project. So it will basically create a project for me. uh, like, basically Firebase, in this specific scenario, we are going to use it for two things. First off is going to be to provide user authentication, that can be done using Firebase auth. And the second of all, we are going to use it as our database, that can be done using Cloud Firestore. So the project is ready, and yep, it is going to open the project for me. What I'll end up doing next is it will ask me to get started by adding my app. So I'll go to my Android app, let's say, and it will ask me to provide a package name. Like, you can get that. What I'm doing is I'm pressing Control plus Shift plus F. This is just to search within the entire app, and I'll write package name. And this is the package name that you want to enter. As of now, I'm not going to, like, okay, let's just say I do that part too. Okay, I'm going to provide this package name to it, and I will provide a nickname. Let's say I call this workshop 2. Sorry for the caps lock error. Anyways, let's register the app. And yeah, what I'm going to do next is I'll have to download this specific file, and I'll download this file. As of now, I'm not downloading it because I've already done that for my project. I'll download this file and I'll place it inside the Android app folder. This is the file, Google services.json. For now, I'll go back to my project, which I've already set up for this workshop. And yeah, this is the project. Within that project, you will have two things. First is the authentication, and the second is the Firestore database. Yep. So, like, if I were to show you the authentication part, if let's say I just log out here, I will create a new account. I call it 3 times a at the rate something. Okay, it's currently not going to verify whether this is an actual account or not. Okay. Okay, I'll sign up now. And yeah, if I now refresh this page, you can see aaa@gmail.com is added to the list of current users. Okay, And if I go to Firestore database, and let's say like this functionality I've implemented here is if I long press on any single thing, it will be added to my favorites. So I long pressed on Afghanistan, it was added to favorites. If I long pressed on some other country, a few examples I'll have. So that will be stored to my favorites. And as you can see here, uh, yeah, uh, like I'll search for my exact user. Yep, the name is triple A, and you can see those things have been stored here. Now you might be wondering how this entire thing is implemented. So if I go to uh, just a minute. Like first of all, like I forgot to mention one thing. If like since we are using Firebase services, and like there are specific packages for it, you will need to add these three packages to your pubspec.yml file. This is the Cloud Firestore package. This is the Firebase underscore auth package and Firebase underscore core package. This provides authentication. This provides data storage, and this provides a general access to all the Firebase services. Okay, and you'll need to add these with the specific versions that you'll get on pub.dev, and you'll need to run pubget. Okay, I've already done that part. And if I go to my Firebase services.dart, okay, I will show, like as you can see within this file, there are many functions. For example, there is a sign in function, there is a sign up function. If I go to like if I go to any one of the functions, for example, there is a fetch favorites function, right? Within this function, you can see it awaits underscore Firebase Firestore, which would be an instance of which is an instance of Firebase Firestore. And what it will do is it will basically say Firebase Firestore dot collection called users. This here, this specific window, left side one column, is the collection, and the collection is called users. And it will say dot doc current user dot uid. This is the list of documents. And it will say get, that is like if this was my user AAA, it will just get this document for me, and that is what I've used to display here, right, in my favorites page. Yeah, those three things. Okay, uh, moving on. This was the authentication and database part. I showed you like authentication, how you are going to use email and password. Similar to what I showed you for fetch favorites, there are functions for sign up as well as for sign in, and those functions will do similar things. They'll have an instance for Firebase, and they'll use that Firebase auth, and they'll use that functions specific to Firebase for it. I specifically showed you an example for the fetch favorites, and this is a function with this is a database related function. Okay, okay. Now that that's clear, I'd like to recap once again what we learned today entirely. First of all, Aman explained you what is architecture and what is the need for architecture, more importantly, right? And second of all, he mentioned state management and why we should do it. Then we talked about how we can integrate MVVM with provider architecture, and how we can do state management with it, as well as showing you the project structure as to how projects can be structured. Then we went to MDG's best practices for navigation, where I showed you like different way, like how we implement navigation. We showed you like how base view and base view model are there, and how every view model must extend the base view model, how views need to return base views of the type of their view models. We showed you generic services, for example, the API service as well as the local storage service that would be present in most of the apps, because they need because all of the apps, like let's say, need to be connected to the internet or have some local storage. We showed you models and app specific services. Models were basically blueprints for how your data should be arranged, and app specific services basically utilize generic services to achieve your functionality within your specific app. Then we showed you how locator works to not make sure that we do not create multiple instances for our services. And then I showed you linting. Just after that, we went to the basics of backend databases and API, how API acts as a link between you and your server. Plus, we talked about Firebase, how to set it up, and then we talked about Firebase Auth as well as the Cloud Firestore.
Okay.
Uh,
So nice. Dhruv, before you move forward, I'll just address Manan's question. Is Firebase free for all? There are different plans for any services that you use, either it is Firebase or AWS or anything. So for Firebase, it is like there's a Spark plan which is free initially for specific reads and writes, and then there is money for scaling up, right? But initially it is free, and you don't have to enter your credit card also. It is completely free for our personal project purposes. It is free. Eh, there's one more question. Why didn't we use finally in try catch? Was that throw? Dhruv, can you address this question? There's I don't think there's a finally thing on in Flutter, right? There's just try catch.
Yep, like that's just just a specific way to implement it. Like if there is an error, we catch it. That's
We
it,
catch
and
it
we
and
throw that error. That's it. That's just syntax for Flutter. Like throw and catch. That's just how syntax is written for Flutter for this specific thing.
yeah, in Dart specifically,
Yeah.
right? Uh, okay, I'll just address one more question of Archita. She was overwhelmed by the information we gave her for Firestore, and yeah.
Okay.
So can you just open that tab for Firebase? I'll just tell you little
Yep.
info about it. See, this is Firebase. This is backend as a service. Now, what is backend as a service? See, what you can do while developing a software, you can have a front end, have a backend, right? But sometimes if you don't want to develop a whole backend, right? That means if you don't want to go to develop your backend in Node.js or Django using some other framework, what you can do is there are already developed backend which are providing their backend services through APIs and packages, right? So Firebase is one such service, right? That's why it is called backend as a service, because it is a service, a backend service. It is providing you services, right? So in this there are multiple services like authentication service, database service, cloud fire store service. There are multiple services that Firebase provides. So we today pick two services, authentication service and Firestore service, and we try to explain those services. Authentication is very self-explanatory, that it helps you authenticate the user, right? It is very simple. Now, when you talk about Firestore, just a minute.
Yep.
Yeah. So when you talk about Firestore, so this is first of all, this is a type of NoSQL database. What is this? You can just Google it. This is also part of Googling skill. You can just go and learn about NoSQL and SQL databases. It would be a good exercise for you. Okay. Now, what Firestore basically contains is two things: collections and documents. What the structure is, there are different collections, and inside every collection there are documents. Then again, inside every document there are collections and fields, right? As you can see, first is a collection, then in a collection there are multiple documents, and in each of the document there is again a collection and some fields for that document. For fields, you can say, see, for example, there can be a user collection, and inside a user collection there are all the users of our app, and inside all the documents that are the users of our app, there are different fields for our users, like say user ka naam, user's address, and everything. They are inside the field. And again, inside every user, you can again have more documents, right? So
Yep.
this is the basic structure of Firestore.
Yep. Like in our specific case, this is the collection users, and every single one of these doc represents a single user. Like I showed you, no? Right now, I just created a new user called AAA, and this is the entire information we have for that specific user.
Hmm.
Yep,
Okay.
that's it.
Yeah. So this is okay. I'll just tell you a little bit about NoSQL and SQL. SQL data in SQL databases, every data is framed inside a table, right? There we define different tables and store data in a table format. But here you can see it is definitely not in any table format, right? When you see this database, do you find any tables or sort of thing? No, you can't find any tables. You can see there are users, and there are multiple users. Inside multiple users there are multiple fields, and every document can again have some collections. Then this tree can grow further. So there is no table sort of thing here. This is very basic English, this is something sort of NoSQL, right? For more understanding, you can just go on YouTube and watch some videos. That would be highly beneficial for you, right? So this was an overview. I guess Arshita can like just understand the basics of it, the Firestore and authentication. Okay, there's a reason why we just chose these two services, right? If you're gonna make a sample app, you're gonna need authentication and you're gonna need storage space.
Storage.
For storage, you can use Firestore and local storage. For authentication, you can use Firebase authentication. So after this workshop, again, you can just play back this workshop and use and see the whole workshop again. Then you will be able to make your own app. Okay, there's one more thing. I'll just tell you this: these services that Firestore is providing or Firebase is providing. This is not specific to an app. These can be used in a website also. This can be used anywhere. What you just need is a library for Firebase, which it provides for all the different languages, and and you should know how to request through APIs. That's all,
Yeah.
right? Dhruv, can you just Google Firestore for Python? You can just Firebase for Python. You can just Google it, and you will find that you can use Firebase services in any Python-based implementation also, right?
Yep.
So there are different admin SDKs, and there's everything that is again, as I said, if you know Googling, then you are a pro, right?
Yeah.
So if you just want to go see, and it is not, see on the left panel you can see there are so many different languages, frameworks, and everything, right?
Yeah.
So Firebase provides its libraries for every for mostly most of the streams, right? You can use Firebase in apps, you can use Firebase in websites and anything. It is just a database or it is just an authentication service. The usage where you use it depends on you, right? So now you can go to the next slide and discuss these tasks, and then we'll give you an important announcement regarding SOC.
Yep. Like here are some links and resources for you. This time we recommend you to complete all the tasks as we have our some season of code lined up where you might need these skills. Like first of all, as I said within the workshop too, try to read about async and await, how these work, and specifically how they are used in Flutter. Also, do check out the code for the test app we used here at this website, like at this link at GitHub. Then try to recreate the app we created by our own in MVVM, like within the same architecture, and push the code to GitHub, and do send us a link on our public Slack workspace. For other resources, this is the resource for like example repo for our app, like and like this is an example repo. Further, this is Firebase for Flutter app, the documentation, and you can always contact us on either our chat or our open Slack workspace, which is preferable. Okay. So now Akansha will tell you more about our SOC. Over to you, Akansha.
Yeah, thank you, Dhruv. So here we come finally. So I'll be telling you about door to our MDG space. We are about to launch our season of code, that is SOC. It is a 2-month long mentorship program where you build your proposed idea. This is not a competition or a hackathon sort of thing. There is no leaderboard or ranking as such. Once your project idea is shortlisted, then you will be continuously assessed by your mentors, and mentors will be MDG space people only. So we'll not compare your progress with other mentees, and this is open to first year rights, obviously, and you can take part in teams or solo. We shall be officially announcing this soon, so stay tuned with us for more details. So this is it for now.
Okay, thanks everyone for
Yeah.
tuning in. The workshop is concluded. Like we'll take up questions now if you have any one of them.
Mhm.
If you have any questions, and we'll keep this slide up further till that time.
Again, you can contact us on all of the channels. We'll answer your doubts there. And once you can you to go to back 2 slides back to the SOC. Yeah. So just one thing I want to tell you. Go participate in SOC. The reason I'm telling you as a senior is SOC is really important because each one student gets two mentors, one third year and one second year, to guide you to make a project that will be released to the IIT or Janta if that project goes to completion and because it is mentored by two people, and if you put efforts to that project, believe me, it's gonna be great, right? So there is a 2 month time which is more than enough for developing any project, any effective project from scratch. So go participate in SOC. We'll be giving you the notification and how to participate in SOC after 1 or 2 days. So keep following us on our social channels. I'll just put the Linktree link inside the chat, so that you can navigate to all the social media handles of ours. Uh, where is the Linktree link? Just a minute, I'll just find that Linktree link. If anybody of you have that Linktree link, you can just post it there, or I'll just do it.
Yep. Also, like if any one of you has any questions, you can go ahead.
You can just go to that slide too. Like the question is
Yep.
good. I got that link. So this is the Linktree link. I just posted it. ET के बाद please. Usman, so what we had done na, we'd put two faces in it, before ET and after ET. So if you're not willing to work before ET, you can do it after ET. Now why we have done this is because we know there are your ETs and we also have our MTs, right? We also want to give our MTs properly, so we cut
Yep.
it in two phases so that you get ample time. Also, you can work after ET and before ET also, whenever you like. Like there is a mentor, you can ask your mentors for proper time to work, and it is pretty chill. Like there's no rush in it, there's no hustle in it, right? You can work whenever you want, after it is, before it is. That is the reason why it is a 2 month long contest, right? 2 months are enough. There are like more than 20 days after ET also.
Yep.
You talked about these tasks, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like,
So these resources which you have written here, na, these are like very less resources. In if I'll be true, right? Go Google stuff, because see, the each resource can't be beneficial to each of you, right? Each of you have different capabilities, and each of you need different set of resources, right? So just go Google, find what resources suits you. Either it is a video, it is documentation, or anything. If you are able to read documentation, na, it is like immensely helpful for you. It will be immensely helpful for you in future, right? So reading documentation and understanding from the documentation is a separate talent, I can say, right? If you're not able to get get it through documentation, then also you can go and watch the videos on specific topics, and you can rewatch this video, right? If you are
yep.
able to understand everything that you talked about in this video, then you are just too much intelligent, right? If I'll tell you frankly, you just can't get everything that you talked about in this video at once. You had to rewatch it at least 2 times, and then Google each of the things separately. Then only you will be understanding each and everything.
Yeah, try to
It is.
rewatch it. Like, plus there is the task now to build this
Mhm.
app on your own. Like, if you do it, you'll encounter many things that you don't understand at all. So you'll end
Mhm.
up googling stuff, and that is how you'll understand how this is built.
Yeah. So the
Is that?
Googling is the key. Googling is one of the key. Don't we have to have SQLite and RoomDB in Flutter? See, this is what you are talking about. Databases is different from Flutter. Say, Flutter, you have, it is, what type of databases you have is not linked to Flutter, right? So you can have SQL based database in Flutter. You can have NoSQL databases in Flutter. You can have shared preference type of database in Flutter. You can have anything. um, Dhruv, you can just Google on pub.dev Hive, HIV
Yeah.
Hive. uh, you can just Google. Okay, ठीक है, यहाँ पे लिखते हैं. So this is a lightweight NoSQL database, right? So, and you can you also Google SQL based databases in Flutter? So if you'll Google na, you'll find everything. But yeah, then they after from these so many databases na, you have to decide which one you have to use. You can't use all of them, right?
Yeah.
So how to decide, that depends on your use case. what type of app you are building, what data you have to cater for that app. That will show you the path on what type of database you will actually use, right? I guess we are finished with the work. I just rewatched a portion during the session also. I had to rest and again join live after some time. We have some pro people among us. Acha, so if you have any questions, you can just drop in the chat and we'll then close this session. We are sitting here. If you have any questions
Yeah,
or any
we'll wait for 5 minutes. You can
uh,
drop in your questions in the chat.
Yep.
feedback भी पूछ लो. मारना मारना हो तुम्हें.
Feel free to give
और
your
किसी को
Feel
feedback.
free
गाना
to
सुनना
leave
हो तो
like
बताना. किसी को गाना वाना सुनना हो तो बता.
like
फालतू
if you
सब
have
नहीं
any
बताएगा.
specific feedback for us, like we'd appreciate whether it's construct like even if it's negative, that would really help us to have a better
हाँ,
workshop the
अगर
next time
नेगेटिव
around.
हो तो डीएम करना.
Yep, exactly.
अगर नेगेटिव है तो डीएम करना. और कुछ
Otherwise, feel free
सॉन्ग
to share.
रिकमेंडेशन हो, वेब सीरीज रिकमेंडेशन हो तो चैट बॉक्स में बता दो. ठीक है, 5 मिनट और रुकते हैं. ठीक है,
Okay.
फिर वी लैंड दिस, राइट. 5 मिनट.
Okay, people already are asking for our numbers to DM. Okay. GitHub repo, like it is shared here, right? github.com/mddidr. Like we'll share the link in a separate post too, like for all the things. If you go to this specific link, uh,
ऐसा कर, ये लिंक्स चैट बॉक्स में डाल देते हैं. आकांक्षा, कैन यू पुट these links in the chat box too? We'll be giving you the slides too, right? So उसमें से भी you can go for these links.
yeah, like we'll share all of this, and this specific link is to the link of two of our projects. First one is the app that we built for lecture one, uh, the app where we showed you scaffold and all of the widgets, and this is the project for lecture two, where we showed you the entire thing, right? Like how architecture is built, how different services for local storage and everything is built, right? Okay, you can
Yeah.
check this out later on.
Hmm.
Plus, you
Okay.
always have the
Dhruv, you can complete. Then
plus
I'll just.
plus you have the recording for reference later. So you can look at the code side by side. Plus, you can see the recording, right, to understand everything. Yeah.
SP, can you type your real name in the chat box too? I'm just curious about it. Yeah. So we will just conclude this workshop here.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah, I
would be
shared the
for.
link of repositories. You can check them out. And yeah, we can close this now.
Yeah.